Hey Internet, it's Joseph again, doing another video here. It's been a couple weeks, lots going on. It's been Halloween. We had a great time this last weekend with the kids. We also had a couple deaths in the family over the last few weeks, and so we've been kind of dealing with that. Apologize for the absence, I suppose, but I'm sure it'll be fine. So I decided to do a video today, a little more contentious issue than I talked about before, but I did bring it up in my first video, spanking. And I had a couple of requests as a result. People were like, no, dig into that, and we really want to hear, your thoughts on it. And because there's a couple parents that I know that I talk to that are kind of struggling with the idea of like, do I spank my kids? Don't I spank my kids? So that's kind of what this video is about. Is just kind of going over, what the rules are, like the law of spanking, like at least in Maine, as well as kind of just a cursory kind of philosophical view of what I feel about spanking, my personal views. And then I'd be interested to hear what you think. Comment, like, subscribe. But let's get into it. Spanking is a form of corporal punishment, whereby you strike the child, typically on the buttocks, typically not with an object, and so to correct wrong action as a way to, they're doing something wrong that you don't like, and you spank them to sort of teach them that, hey, if you do this, I'm going to spank you. Don't do this. That's kind of how I take spanking, and I think that's kind of a pretty fair assessment. I couldn't find any state that directly prohibits spanking. In Maine, the law's interesting because it's under Title 17A, Section 554, 1B1. And that's under justifications for endangering the welfare of a child. And that's an interesting point to me, that it's not a law saying, yes, you can spank your kids. It's saying that you're allowed to abuse your children to an extent. That's how I read that. And I know a lot of people disagree with that. And I know that's probably going to be an unpopular view. But that's how I see it. That's how I see it when you're looking at if it's an exception to a crime. It's kind of like it's not okay to kill somebody unless they're trying to kill you, right? That's a justification. Self-defense is a justification for murder. You're still committing murder, but you're justified in doing so. So how I kind of extrapolate that, and maybe I might be kind of being too simplistic, but you're abusing your child, but it's okay. That's how I see spanking. The biggest thing is spanking is violence. You are hitting your child. And now you can make the argument whether or not you feel that it's necessary or useful, but you are actually hitting your child, and you are using violence as a conflict resolution, and that's one of the things that I want to focus on, because it teaches bad conflict resolution. Those are the issues that's one of the major issues that I have with spanking. I was spanked as a child, and it wasn't used sparingly, we'll just say. And upon reading, there are several articles that you can read, which I will link in the description. One that's really nice. It was done by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And it really goes into, physical punishment and mental disorders. Basically, they're saying that physical punishment can be correlative to certain disorders. And one of the big conclusions of this study in the article is harsh physical punishments in the absence of child maltreatment is associated with mood disorders, anxiety disorders, substance abuse, dependence, and personality disorder in general population samples. And what that means is, like, even in the absence of neglect, even in the absence of sexual abuse or any other kind of abuse, simply using physical punishment still increases the odds of mood disorders, anxiety disorders, alcohol, drug abuse, and dependence, several personality disorders, and that's even, they even make the point that they're adjusting for socio-demographic variables and family history of dysfunction. So to me, this shows that it's one study. There are others, and honestly, there are many others with similar results. The kind of my analysis of it is this: is that I think spanking is wrong. I don't think it's a useful tool. Getting rid of spanking isn't getting rid of a useful tool. There are better ways to discipline your children. And I've never really had to spank my children. don't think I'm trying to think of a situation where I've ever spanked them or hit them. That's not to say I don't use physical means when it's necessary, such as when Jarek is running around throwing things and it's bedtime, and I'll scoop him up and I'll carry him down to his room. And so in a sense, that's kind of a form of violence, is making him go to bed, but I'm not hitting him. And I think that is a step in the right direction, I suppose. Because I guess kind of it might sound altruistic, it might seem like a dream, but I feel like if you remove violence from as many areas of human interaction as possible, you will propagate a more peaceful society. And that's what I say. I mean, obviously, violence is unavoidable sometimes. There are situations in your life where violence is going to come up, and you have to respond to it one way or the other. I just don't see that it's necessary or useful in parenting. It really just baffles my mind that people, because I have talked to some people and I watched some videos on pro spanking. To be fair to the video, I want to kind of get into it, and one of the common things is, well, you can't do certain things in the world without getting hit, and that's true. But you shouldn't have to worry about getting hit by your parents. Just from my own personal experience, it creates an environment of fear. You're fearful of your parents instead of learning why what you were doing was wrong. And that's kind of my take on it. That instead of explaining to the child why they're wrong or why their actions are unacceptable, you're just hitting the kid and then telling them, wham, you get hit if you do this. So you're instilling not an understanding of the right and wrong of the situation, you're instilling a fear of the violence that might result from these choices. And so the problem that gets into is when they become adults and they're not afraid of violence anymore, they're not afraid of being hit anymore, then what moral mechanism do they have to determine right or wrong? If you're only determining right or wrong based on when violence is going to ensue, it's not a very productive measure for social interaction, in my opinion. And so I guess that there are many different views on this. There are many different kind of takes on it. There are several, as I said, several articles and videos. This is not a unique topic. It's simply a contentious one. There's a YouTuber, Stefan Molyneux, does Free Domain Radio. Now, admittedly, have not watched all of his. He has a lot of different videos, but the ones that he does on parenting are very, very good, in my opinion. I think they're worth a watch. They simply, if nothing else, they'll give you a different perspective on the topic. So that's kind of my take on spanking. I can't think. I've racked my brain, and I have come up blank of a situation where spanking my kid is the most useful approach. Now, does it get results short term? Sure. They're going to stop doing what you told, but not because they know it's wrong, because they're afraid you're going to hit them again. And that's I guess, again, it just goes back to, you don't propagate fear and violence in human society, especially in a childhood. That's not to say that your children aren't going to meet with adversity, and they're not going to be bullied or pushed in the school. That's why I also advocate for self-defense classes. All my children, Amelia's taking Taekwondo, and Aiden wrestles, and then when they're a little older, you have to learn how to defend yourself. There's going to be a basic self-defense that my children have to learn, because you're right, learning how to deal with violence is a necessary skill for you to learn, but you shouldn't have to learn to deal with it from your parents. And that's kind of my take on it. So, again, check out Stefan Molyneux's videos on parenting. Like and subscribe if you like the video. And I will see you guys next time.